Today we're driving from the west part of Denmark to Copenhagen. That's where my flight's at. It's about a 3-hour drive. Occasionally we'll pass by a field that smells like duty. I'm not gonna miss that, but I'll miss everything else. Going through that bridge to get to the other side of the country, to get into Copenhagen, cost 270 Danish crowns, which is roughly 40 US dollars. And that just kind of seems like a lot to use a public road. Copenhagen is the capital of Denmark, which, if you're watching this video, you probably already knew that. The city started as a Viking fishing village in the 10th century and was possibly founded by a guy named Sven Forkbeard. Would be pretty cool if he named it after himself. But the name Copenhagen comes from the Old Norse words for merchant's harbor. It kind of works like that in English. The same words would be chapman's haven. Chapman is an old-timey British word for dealer or hawker. Fun fact, the city's Latin name is Hafnia because of the Old Norse word hafen for harbor. The element hafnium was discovered in Copenhagen, so that's why it's called hafnium. Copenhagen is the most bike-friendly city in the world. I wish California was better designed for bikes. I mean, compared to Scandinavia, we have the weather for it, am I right? This is Rosenborg Castle. It was built in 1606 as a summer house for King Christian IV. Imagine they had Airbnb back then. The cleaning fee would be astronomical. After 1710, it was only used 2 times as a royal residence during emergencies, a fire and a British attack. Not the worst place to seek shelter, I guess. We're going up to see Kronborg Castle today. It's about 40 minutes north of Copenhagen. It's a little rainy today. Okay, it's like a lot rainy today. Kronborg Castle was built as a stronghold by King Eric VII in the 1420s. It's located at a strategic point overlooking one of the few outlets of the Baltic Sea, and only about 2.5 miles, or 4 kilometers away from Sweden across the water. The captain of every ship sailing through here had to state the value of the ship's cargo. But the king also had the right to buy the cargo for the price stated, to prevent captains from lying about how cheap their goods were. The castle you're about to see is what inspired Shakespeare's castle in Hamlet. To tour or not to tour? That is the question. To which I said yes. Let's go! The Danes and the Swedes were at war from 1658 to 1660, and Denmark lost. So the Swedes ended up occupying the castle and stole a lot of precious artwork. I hope they returned it. That's the neighborly thing to do. Anyway, after this happened, Denmark ramped up their defenses with a new series of ramparts, ultimately becoming the strongest fortress in Europe.
Yes, I'll have sweetbread and ox gums with their finest ragu.
So this is the toilet, and the way modern plumbing worked was you went and it fell way down there. It's actually pretty comfortable.
Sidste i Danmark.
my god. From 1739 until the 20th century, Kronborg was used as a prison. The convicts were sentenced to work manual labor on the castle's fortifications. Those with minor sentences were allowed to work outside the castle walls. The really bad boys doing time for things like murder or arson had to stay inside the ramparts doing hard physical labor. All the prisoners wore chains and spent their nights in these casemates, which I understand to be drastically different from Danish prisons today. I feel like I'm in an episode of Scooby-Doo. There's steam or something coming out when I talk. If I didn't have a flashlight on my phone, I would be dead. Oh, and there might be bats down here too. So there used to be a fountain right here. But many centuries ago, the Swedes came over and stole it. So one of the kings here, King Frederick II, I believe, he was supposed to marry a woman from Pomerania, I think. And so when she was coming up here, she had like her whole entourage, her whole family with her. One of them was her 14-year-old daughter, Sophie. And upon seeing 14-year-old Sophie, the king was like, "Never mind, I don't want to marry you. I want to marry your daughter." They had a really nice marriage and had 7 kids. Things were different back then. Compared to Kronborg Castle, there isn't much left of this one, Gurre. It was built in the 12th century, and then they added 4 towers and a perimeter wall in the 1350s. Something I wish I could add to my studio apartment. All good things must come to an end, which for this castle was in the beginning of the 16th century, and materials from here were used to build Kronborg. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I like castles. I think in a past life I lived in a castle. So this one here in the center is a defensive tower. And it used to actually be, I think, the sign said 3 stories high. But just the first story remains today. Pope Urban V sent a gift of relics to its chapel, which we'll also visit. The chapel, not the relics. I don't know where those are. I can barely make it out, but I see 1790 to 1837 or 57. So the ruins of this chapel, which is only about 400 meters east of the castle I was just at, was built in, I think, the mid-1300s. And then in the 1800s, it was excavated. Today I'm at Tivoli, which, if you are a tourist to Copenhagen and you look up things to do, Tivoli is probably going to be at the top of the list. Tivoli is an amusement park and also what Wikipedia calls a pleasure garden. It opened in 1843 and it's conveniently next to the Copenhagen train station. It inspired Walt Disney to make Disneyland. Its most famous ride is a wooden roller coaster built in 1914, which doesn't sound dangerous at all. At nighttime, this building lights up really pretty.
Hey, Rami, George,
But it's not nighttime. This is my third time in Copenhagen and my first time in Tivoli. Fun fact, Tivoli was founded in 1843 and we're celebrating their 180th birthday this year. Disneyland was founded in 1955. I wish I came sooner. It's a nice way to spend part of the day. You don't have to spend all day here. It's not an all-day thing, I guess, unless you really like the rides. You can't make everyone happy, you're not a pizza. Again soon, Tivoli! Here's a fun fact I bet you didn't know. Denmark had a brief colonial presence in India. The Danish East India Company established settlements in the 16 and 1700s to trade spices and other goods. In 1845, Denmark sold its Indian territories to Britain, as if they didn't have enough colonies back then. I thought 3 hours would be plenty here at the museum, and it's not. We saw like half the stuff. You want to spend more time here than at Tivoli. We're taking a day trip to Malmo today. From Copenhagen, it's about a 40-minute train ride. We came to Sweden for one reason and one reason only. To get back the fountain they stole at Kronborg Castle centuries ago. En dag i staden, på Esplanaden, na 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 na. Really pretty old building and then modern.